Hey, I love therapy, and in fact, I've been going to therapy since I was around 6 years old. Though I talk about therapy a lot and may interview some therapists on the show on occasion, nothing that is said in this podcast should be considered a replacement for therapy. If you are struggling, I urge you to please seek guidance from a therapist because you are absolutely worth it. Hello, everyone. You are listening to Wine, Dine, and 69, a podcast about dating, relationships, sex, and self-love. I am your host, Rachel Dalton. This is going to be a quicker intro today than I intended because I am in between things. It has been a very, very stressful couple of weeks, but at the end of the day, I'm getting stuff done, and that feels good. So it's all worth it. By the time that you listen to this, the day that this is coming out, I'll be at a wedding, so that's pretty appropriate for this episode, which is about planning a wedding. I love how I say that as if I didn't intentionally plan it this way. I did. I planned it so that this episode would air on a day that I was going to be at a wedding, and 2 weeks before I'm going to be at another wedding. So it's wedding season, right? That's June. Although I hear rumors that they might be switching and more people might be getting married in the fall. I don't know. But anyway. Yes, today I speak to a wedding planner, Valerie. It's a great conversation. She tells us a ton of stories about a bunch of different things that she's run into. It sounds like a really interesting job, one that I've actually thought about getting into in the past before, but it definitely keeps you on your toes. It sounds like, I think she said she has 3 pairs of shoes that she has ready to go for a wedding day. So it's very, very busy. One quick little housekeeping thing. The wrong episode was uploaded for the last episode, the wrong file. And my apologies for that. It got fixed really quickly on all platforms except for Spotify, which is, of course, the platform that most people listen on. So that's a little bit annoying. I'm hoping that by the time this episode that you're listening to right now is out, that it should have updated with the feed on Spotify. So apologies for that. It is on the other platforms, and fingers crossed that by the time that this is out, it's on Spotify too. Yeah, I think that's it. I am moving fast. Got to get things done. Have another podcast interview in, about a minute. And then I have to pack because I'm going to Seattle to go to a aforementioned wedding. Congratulations to my friend Bet and her soon-to-be husband, Jason. All right, I think that's it, everyone. Enjoy the episode. I'm going to cut to a quick commercial break, and then please enjoy my conversation with the wedding planner, Valerie.
Calling all citizens of Halcyon City. The newest generation of heroes are now painting the pages of Delinquent Comics, an actual play podcast in the game world of Masks, a new generation. Join our heroes as they struggle to build a team and save the city. Can Titan escape the shadow of his mentor burnout? Is Soul's overwhelming power too dangerous to control? Will Muse discover her past? And how does White Knight stomach all those strange snacks? Listen to Delinquent Comics to find out at allportsopen.com, Spotify, iTunes, or wherever podcasts are found. New issues become available to all citizens every other Monday.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am thrilled to be jumping into my conversation today with my guest, Valerie. Valerie, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast, and I look forward to chatting with you.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get into this topic. We were chatting a little bit before we hit record. It's kind of fun to get a different twist on, relationships and
Right.
Marriage and everything. So today we're going to be talking about wedding planning.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've seen the movies. I am not married. I have not been married, but I can only imagine how stressful it's been.
It's a crazy ride, to say the least of things. Is never a dull moment, to be honest with you.
That's what keeps life exciting.
And you have to spice it up, right? You have to have a little spice, or else life or else life would be a little too boring, in my opinion, if you don't
Yeah, I
keep
think
it
that's true.
something to keep it going, right? So to speak, from my
Definitely.
perspective.
I think that's true. And
Mm-hmm.
well, with that, I'm going to have you start by just telling me and the listeners a little bit about you, a little bit about what you do, like your story of how you came to
Sure.
get involved in
Yeah.
this work.
So I guess you could say technically it started, I'd say, so first, let me start from way, way, way back when I was younger. Way back
Perfect.
before everything, I guess. So when I was younger, I guess from my perspective, I always liked to be organized, which, is nothing too far-fetched. I always enjoyed, I guess, planning little things. And I remember the first thing I ever planned when I was a child, right, when I was young, was I remember, and it's gonna sound so, my little brother, we're 10 years apart, right? And I remember, like, I don't know where I came up with the idea, but I think that's what started. It was like I created like this little fun day of activity, like a little activities, like a little carnival for him, like something like really cute because he was younger than me, right? And that got me, I guess, started. If that makes sense. Like I like to plan when I was younger, like just a few little things here and there, nothing too crazy. But I think me organizing this little carnival idea and like coming up, printing everything, making him like fake tickets and everything. I think that's what started like my first interest, I guess, in planning. But I was very young. And then when I got into high school, I joined, it was called this group called Best Buddies. And
Okay.
basically it was to help kids with like learning disabilities and everything, just to make friends and everything. And then before I graduated, I was the leader. I decided to, I signed up to be the leader. It's all volunteer, and as the leader I had to do some fundraising and plan some events. So in a way, little by little I got more curious of how it was to plan events. Again, it was very tiny events, but I always had an interest in that. So if that makes sense, that's where it really, really started my curiosity of events. And this is like when I was way younger than I am now. And
Right.
then I guess, from there, life went on, and I sort of forgot about that event planning, like little small planning past, because I got older. And before I decided to go full force in wedding planning and slash event planning, I was a little lost. I'm like, well, what do I want to do in my life? I was in college. I wasn't quite sure. And then I remember, I'm like, yes, like Best Buddies. I enjoyed doing that, right? And then before I really, I guess, took the plunge and go full force, I actually, when I was in college, again, I was leaving, it was my graduating year. And one of my past teachers, past instructor that I had, he came up to me, we're chit-chatting. He's like, hey, how would you like to be my assistant teacher and for public speaking of all classes? And he's like, how about you be the TA? And I'm like, sure. I'm like, what does that involve? And he's like, one part is to plan the public speaking competition. I'm like, that's what I love to plan. Forget the teaching part. I love to plan. So
There you
that
go.
year, exactly. So that year, like he said, that was one of the better public speaking competitions they actually had, because I enjoyed it, right? And I spent so much time planning. And then from there, when I went to university, I did study in event planning. There is a course that I did take. And then after I graduated, it was a pandemic, believe it or not. I graduated during the pandemic when COVID,
Oh,
first hit
gosh.
everyone. Yeah, of all times to do events, when basically
Yeah, that's true.
the world,
Oh,
the
yeah.
world shut down, right? You couldn't do weddings, you couldn't do anything. So then my now fiance, right, he said, why don't you see where it goes, type of thing, right? He sort of encouraged me to take it where is now my wedding planning company, right? He was the one that basically, inspired me to keep going. It was him, and he actually helped me do my website, and now he's the one behind the scenes on the website and everything. So thanks to him, I have a very pretty website,
Oh, that's
thankfully, because
great.
I'm not the best with the tech part, but he does an amazing job at it. And very thankful for him. And I had, my family support me during the pandemic to really build my brand, if that makes sense. So I had technically a few months or even a year to really build how I want to have my company. So it all, I guess you could say, sort of worked out on its own where it started. Like it was like just bits and pieces. And then I realized this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And then during the pandemic, when things were a little quiet, I decided to certify myself to be a certified wedding planner. There's a course that it's by the Wedding Planners Institute of Canada, but it's pretty much available worldwide. And that's when I decided, like, okay, like I mean business, like this is for real, like no going back, right? I took the course along with my education back in university, and that's where I am today. So I guess you could say it's like all like little pieces throughout my life. There's like little peaks where, I had that interest for planning, right? And
Totally.
I just took that, and that was it. And I'm here now. So, and and during pandemic, I was a little scared. I'm like, well, what happens if this goes on forever, right? So to speak. I was concerned. I'm like, well, I'm planning weddings, and that's technically a gathering, right? So I was a little scared about that. Not gonna lie with you, I was a little panicky, but at the end of the day, I'm happy that I didn't look back and be scared. I just basically went for it, and I just went for the flow of things, so to speak, to see where and how, like, and where I could go with it. So I'd say that's pretty much sums it up in a
Yeah, that's the
nutshell.
overall story. Well, it's great because I mean, I relate to that so much.
Hmm.
I was the person who I would go over to my friends' houses when I was a kid and
Yeah.
I would organize their bedrooms.
Oh my gosh.
And
Yes.
their moms
Yes.
would be like so happy. Their moms would be like, "Oh, can you come back next week and do the
I
kitchen?"
love
And
that. I love that.
I
I love
always
that.
wanted to pursue something like, event planning. And, I when I went
Hmm.
through kind of my career, my quarter life
Right.
crisis, I guess you could say a few years
Okay.
ago, I was trying
Right.
to figure it out. And
Right.
event planning was one of the things that I visited. But it felt so hard to like get started in.
And I'm happy you brought that up, because when I first started, I'm like, because I didn't know anyone that was a wedding or event planner. I didn't know who, besides my teachers in school, right? But again, they were already past, they were close to retiring, right? So I didn't
Right.
have like anyone young that I could like refer to or ask questions, or like how is it really running a business on your own, right? Because it's different. You're your own boss, which don't get me wrong, I love, but there's pros and cons to everything, right?
Definitely.
There's many pros, but yet there's many cons. So, I had no one, that I could talk to. Yes, I had the teachers. I could always ask questions, and I'm very thankful that the course I took for the certification to become a wedding planner, I always have, their support in a way, but it's like the chat and everything, but and I'm very thankful for that. But before, I guess, I decided to do that, I had no one to just ask them, like, seriously, like, how is it? What's it really being like a wedding planner? You know what I mean? I had no one to ask that about. So my only reference is I watched what shows, like I found some like random shows online about like wedding planners, but that's all not necessarily true, right? So again, take it with a
Sure.
grain of salt. But I feel like, I wouldn't look back, but I was scared in the beginning. I'm like, how am I going to be a wedding planner? I'm like, it's a crazy. I think it's not. It's crazy. It's a crazy job. Don't get me wrong. It's never always something, And my job is to make sure that the wedding happens, right? But to get mentally, I guess, in the right headspace, you have to put yourself second. You have to put your clients first, so to speak, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
clients, they're relying on you as a wedding planner, right? They're relying on you to make their day happen. And there's so many moments where I'm like, well, like I should have acted this way, or maybe I should have done that in the beginning, but I'm always learning something new, right? Because I've been doing this, like I say, for 3 years now. It's my third quote unquote wedding season. So it's
Wow.
not my first wedding, and it won't be my last, but realistically, I always learn something new. Like it's never, oh, I knew. No, you learn new stuff about yourself being a wedding planner, and how to control. You can control certain things, but at the same time, there's so many things that are out of your control. Like today, for example, I'm not naming names or anyone, but there is a venue that forgot to tell me information that should have been told to me in the beginning, right? So there's
Mm.
certain things like that you can't control. And why didn't they tell me? I don't have the answer, right? And I've been in contact with said venue for 6 months now, I think, and not once did that come up. So now I learned, added on to my knowledge that, hey, I should ask more questions to begin with. You know what I mean? So you always learn something new. And I feel like after I did my first wedding ever, I'm like, okay, like this is it. Like there's no going back. I love the high and the low. And I laugh to myself because when I'm doing a wedding, there's so much adrenaline and you have to think quick on your feet. Like there's a lot of moving parts on a wedding day, right? There's the setup, make
Definitely.
sure make sure staff is good, make sure everyone's on schedule, make sure everything is supposed to be. And then the next day, so let's say the next day after wedding is like the wedding crash because like my bones are killing, like everything hurts. I'm maybe a little even dehydrated, didn't eat that much. So it's a reality too that no one I feel talks about, you know what I mean? Like the wedding crash the day after, all the adrenaline, all the energy that I need to have for the day. Cause my day, depending the wedding, my day starts at 8, 9 in the morning, maybe,
Right.
depending on the venue and what time they allow me to come in. And then my day ends at 9 at night. So it's a long day, but it's so rewarding at the end of the day because I'm bringing that couple's wedding dream to reality, right? And myself and the couple have been working close to a year on it, right? In some cases, even more. So, it's so worth it then, but no one talks about how exhausting it really is. Like
Oh,
the next
totally.
day, the next day I'm done. Like, I'll only answer you if it's super important. If not, I'll get back to you the
It's a
following
self-care
day.
day.
I
Yeah.
need for self-care doesn't even explain it. Like when I mean my bones hurt, I don't know how else to explain it. They're killing. And I always end up with a bruise I didn't know I had. I always end up with a bruise. I'm like, when did I get the bruise? Because you're like, ow, and you're like, oh, another one that I got. Or my feet, your feet are killing because again, you're on your feet. Of course, I have like a pair, like I change my shoes, right, to something more comfier towards the end when I'm leaving. But remember too, it's all about how I present myself, right? I'm not going to show up
Right.
looking, I'm the wedding planner. I have to look a certain way. And remember, the key, what I learned is I have to blend in. I'm not there to, I'm not a guest. I'm not there to be a guest. I'm there to work, Because in the beginning, I remember after I took the wedding planner course, and don't get me wrong, I'm so happy I did because they taught me a bit about like what to wear, what not to wear, right? But at the end of the day, it was on me what I felt comfortable wearing, right? So, depends the weather. Do I wear pants? Do I wear a dress? When I set up, do I go already in my dress? Like, there's so many things I had to figure out in the beginning that I'm like, well, I have to dress appropriately because I'm the planner and people are going to be looking at me saying, what is she wearing, right? So now I pretty much got down to a science what to wear. If it's a nice hot day, I wear like a very appropriate like style dress, nothing too short, nothing too long because I don't want to look older than I am. And I always have a blazer on me, very professional, my clipboard, and I have 3 pairs of shoes that I bring. I have my ceremony shoes to, because it's a ceremony. Then I have like a pair of like fancy running shoes, if that makes sense. Like
Okay.
fancy running shoes, if that makes sense, that I wear because I could actually run up and down the stairs in those, believe it or not. Because for the ceremony shoes, there's no way I could run up and down stairs or run across a certain amount of space. And then when I'm done, before I leave, I have like these cozy sandals. Like they're like fluffy. I don't know if you saw the
Okay.
UGG fluffy sandals. Those I
Oh,
wear.
yeah.
Like I
Okay.
wear those because I'm leaving in my car and I'm gone. You will not see me after. Like, of course, they say bye to couple and then I leave. Because my feet after that, for like it, and I learned what I bought, and I have to be careful when I use it. It's like this spray that numbs the pain. It's like this cool spray that you spray on, but I have to be careful because one wedding I overdid it and my feet were numb for a whole day basically.
Oh,
So I
wow.
have
Yeah,
to
no,
yeah,
that's not
I have
helpful.
to I have to be careful how much I use. So if I'm desperate to use it, I will use it, but I'm trying not to because after that I got scared. I'm like, uh-oh, how do I explain this to the doctor if I have a problem? Like, by the way, I sprayed a whole bunch, but now I'm too bad, like too bad, too sad. So that's why, I'm always careful because I have to be in tip top shape, right? I can't, I have to be careful not to get hurt, and even before the wedding, prepping before the wedding, I have to make sure I try not to get sick. I try to be careful, not don't go out if it's, too hot or too cold. I always have to be, I guess, in a good space where I don't, if you're sick, okay, it happens, but I can't get a big cold, right? I can't catch a
Right.
really bad ammonia because
Can't get COVID. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I can't get anything. So that's why leading up to my season, I'm like, I take more, let's say, vitamins, or I don't even know if it helps, but so far, knock on wood, it's helping whatever I'm doing, because not only is my client counting on me, but the venue is counting on me too to be there, right? So, because it's a teamwork with me and the venue, right? Where it's a team effort, right? Because they provide the venue and the staff, and I provide pretty much all the
The moving
information that
parts.
they
Yeah.
need. Yeah, the moving parts. So without me, so to speak, yes, the wedding would still happen. I have no doubt about, depending the venue. I mean, that's a whole other story for another time. But depending the venue, who the venue is, but most of the time, so far all the venues that I worked with, Lord forbid it would have happened that I would have gotten sick, I would trust them to bring it to do everything properly without my presence. But for now it's only me, but eventually over time I do plan to have more staff under me, which could be very helpful. But at the same time, I feel like I'm a control freak too, in a way, which is not a good thing in some cases.
Well,
It
I
could
feel
be,
like you kind of have to have
I
some kind
have
of,
to,
it's a positive thing for that type
I
of work.
I don't, I mean, I have to make sure, let's say, when if I do decide to expand one day in the future, I have to make sure whoever my staff is, they understand, like, this is what I expect from them, right? And not to sabotage. Because I read stories online, true or not, but some were very concerning, saying, oh, I hired an assistant or this, and then they sabotaged everything, or they purposely did it on purpose to ruin it, to ruin your name, right? And I remember once, I forget where it was, I think it was on Reddit. True, again, I don't know if it's true or not, but apparently there was a wedding planner on Reddit saying, I hired an assistant, everything looked good, everything matched, everything was going well. That assistant, she said, on purpose ruined a very high profile wedding, ruined it completely, and she had to let the assistant go, right? And because she ruined
Of
her brand.
course.
And later, through the grapevine, she found out it was the competition, that her competition, like, basically sent an assistant there to ruin it, to ruin her brand. It was one of her
What?
competitors. Yeah, I read it on Reddit. I don't know where that post is now, but I remember it, and that story stuck to me because I'm like, that's so catty. Like, you basically
Yeah.
on purpose ruin someone else's brand competition, right? So yeah, that was, and this was even this was when I just started out. I saw this story right on Reddit. I don't know if it's there anymore. I have no idea. Like, and with Reddit, I was just looking like that. You know what I mean? And you see, you're like, oh my gosh, like, what's that? So that made me think too. I'm like, well, what happens if someone does that to me, right? And the thing is, I don't, at least in Montreal where I'm from, I don't know about elsewhere, but in Montreal, it's a very small wedding planner and vendor community, right? It's very small and everyone talks, right? So
Right. Yeah.
the word would spread like, it would spread through the grapevine. But that's one thing too, you know, that I realized, that, like, and it took me, I guess, time to realize over time that, it's a very small wedding planning community, right? The vendors, and everyone talks, and everyone, has their preferred vendors. I have my preferred vendors that I always want to work with because they do, like, a really good service and amazing job, right? But I guess, you keep the ones close, that you trust, and you hope they don't do anything to you, right? That you're like, well, why did I trust you, right? So that's one thing too that I realized as time went on, that just always have your preferred vendor list that I work with, and I know, they won't do anything to me to sabotage my name, if
Right.
that makes sense. Because, you have to, in the world of, at least, any business world, you always have to look out for yourself too, in a way, because anyone could do what happened to the one in the story, so to speak, right? So if anything, that what she was writing, the story made me open my saying, hey, this could maybe it happened to other people, I wouldn't know, but it made me think, like, okay, yes, I have to trust them, because with no trust, you don't have that partnership,
Right.
right? And in any, especially I find when it comes to weddings, a wedding only happens once, right? So to
Hmm.
speak. And
Hopefully.
yeah, you hope
Between
it
those
only,
two people,
yeah,
the chances are low that it
exactly.
will happen again, but
Exactly. But, you hear stories through the grapevine too that, oh, but it's more like, without that partnership with a vendor, right? You and remember, vendors speak too. Everyone talks. So you always have to, I guess, be on your A game, and the ones you trust, I show them that I trust them. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, I got your back and you have to have my back too, right? Because that's how it works. What I notice is like, well, referrals, right? Like, oh, hey, I have a client, or hey, I have a client for you, type of thing, back and forth, because we want to work with each other again, right? Because for me,
there's a
I've
camaraderie, a rapport that's
exactly,
been.
because it's so fun for me when I worked with past vendors. I know it's going to be a good time for me too because I worked with them before. I'm like, hey, I know it's going to be a fun night. I know already I'm going to have a good time. No matter whatever might happen during the day, I know I'll still have a good time at the end with the vendors. I'll have a good time because how it works, it depends on the wedding planner you speak to. But for me, I always have a vendor table, right? So it's usually myself, DJ, let's say, photographer, videographer, and let's say a second photographer, a second videographer, right? So usually there's like 5 of us at a table. And remember, some of these vendors I never worked with before, right? But some I did. So I know the ones I worked with. I'm like, hey, I know I'm gonna have a good chit chat with this one, or following up from the last wedding we worked, right? Because we might have done a wedding before. So it's like it's nice to catch up with them as well. Because during peak season now, when it's the peak, I can't go out for coffee with them or just catch up. I can't do that
Oh
because we're
yeah,
all
you're both
working.
so busy.
Yeah, we're working, and every weekend you're pretty much at a wedding. And not only that, but leading up to the wedding, everyone's just so busy. So it's nice that I get to hang out with them again at a wedding, even if it's for those like
Right.
15 minutes to talk to them, like, hey, how's this going? Or hey, how did that wedding go that you said you did last time? So it's really nice to catch up with them and see how life is going, how their kids, whatever the case might be. It's nice to catch up. So I know, because when I have a consultation with a potential client, you know I'm always like, okay, who are your vendors you're booked? So what I like to do, and is I say, hey, I have a list of recommended vendors, and I know, if they pick one of them, I'm working with so and so again. If that's the
Somebody who
case,
you
but
trust already. Yeah.
exactly, that I trust and I know I have a good time with. Because, for example, in the beginning and even now, you learn, I always add to that list of preferred vendors. I'm always adding, preferred vendors. And some of the vendors I have on the list, they're no longer in the industry. It happens, things change, things happen,
Sure.
right? So I remove them because I'm like, well, they're no longer in the business. So why keep them, right? But I'd say most of my list is pretty much when I just started. Everyone's still in the industry. So it's nice to see that they're still around, so I could always recommend them and refer them. But at the end of the day, I could say I had some really negative experience with some vendors because a client chose them and I had to work with them, but I wouldn't recommend working with them again, right? But that's just
Yeah.
my opinion. But another wedding planner might be like, hey, they're the best. So it depends who who you're talking to. And I think it's very important to mention that, all wedding planners, including myself, we're all very different on how we plan and how we work, right?
Well,
Like
and you're
for
all
me,
different individuals. Yeah.
exactly. And some, for me, I have a rule that I tell my clients that after 9 p.m. I don't answer any more emails or text message or phone calls, right? Until the next day. Because I want some me time too, right? I have things to do. I want the peaceful time before I go to sleep and, do what I need to do. But some wedding planners might stay up, what I mean? So it all depends on who you're talking to, right? But I made that rule in the beginning saying, hey, I need some quiet time too and to relax, right? So everyone's different. And I know for a fact when potential clients, for consultations, they're like, oh, we spoke to another wedding planner. I'm like, that's great, I'm happy you could see the difference, because we're all very different. And some say, oh, why did this one say this or this one say that? And I'm like, I can't help you, I don't know why they said that or promised you this, right? But at the end, we all do the same job, right? We all plan weddings, we just do it a little differently. And
A little
that's why,
differently.
exactly. And that's why I always tell, potential clients for a consultation, I'm like, look, you might talk to another wedding planner and they might say this, that, and that. I might do it differently, but at the end of the day, we have the same end goal, right? To make your wedding happen. And now it's up to the client, potential client, to decide who they want to work with, right?
Depending on
And
who the client themselves are most compatible with, right?
exactly, because it's that relationship, right, that I have to build for a whole year in some cases, right? Because usually clients, potential clients come to me usually 6 months before the wedding, even 7 months before the wedding, because in the beginning, and I'm gonna be honest with you, in the beginning, you're all excited, you just got engaged, everything is so perfect, right? You're like, oh my God, I'm engaged, all the good stuff. And then you realize, like, hey, we have to plan a wedding, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, hold up a second. And remember, you never done this before unless if you're a wedding planner, right? Which many people aren't a wedding planner, right? And then my favorite, oh my gosh, my favorite when clients come to me and I'm always like, oh boy, they're like, oh, my example bridesmaid wants to help plan my wedding. I'm like, that's great. That's amazing. I'm so thrilled you said that, sarcastically, of course. But I'm horrible. I'm so bad. And then, oh my God. And then, and then and then my favorite line, because I tell them, like, yes, that's great. I'm happy that they want to help you, of course. And they're like, yeah, but on the wedding day they'll want to help plan. And I'm like, whoa, like, okay, hold up a second. I'm like, do you want me or do you want your bridesmaid to do the wedding? Because
you only can have
it's
one point person.
it's not gonna happen that it's not gonna happen that I'm gonna be working with your bridesmaid when she has no clue, no offense to your bridesmaid, no clue what she's doing, right? And honestly, like, are you a wedding planner? No. Who's the planner? Me. Let me do what I have to do to make your wedding happen,
It's like you're literally paying me to plan your wedding.
You're paying me to plan your wedding. So what? Do you want your bridesmaid or do you want me? Because I remember once I couldn't take a client because of this, and I knew it was a huge red flag in my face. So same thing. So it was a consultation, and usually I do my consultations over the phone, right? Because it's just an initial consultation, right? Just to chit chat, to see, like, more, what's going on, what just to give me the details, right? And to see, and in that consultation, I always have like a list of questions I ask to see, okay, how did they answer it, like, or did they totally ignore it, right? But I make it in a sense that I'm not like pressuring them to come to work with me, right? Because I learned, again, this is just my own opinion, what I learned is, like, if a potential client comes back to me within like 20 minutes after the phone call saying, hey, we want to work with you, I know it's a red flag. Because usually what I notice is the good clients, which I'm thankful I had many good clients, they come back after 2 days and say, we want to work with you. But, and again, I could be so wrong. It depends on the planner. But for me, what I learned over time is that the clients that are a huge red flag, they'll come after like 40 minutes saying, yeah, we're ready. I'm like, that's great. And I always urge them, like to really think about, because you're signing on is a huge commitment, because we're a team, right? I'm counting on you to give me the information that I need, and you have to tell me what's going on in your head. I'm not a mind reader. I wish I was sometimes, but I'm not. I'm just a wedding planner. I'm not a therapist or a mind reader. Therapist, that comes with the job. You have to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I bet that does kind of come with it.
You have to, right? You have to, deal with certain situations, but it's more for me, I learned over time the clients that were a little difficult to work with at the end were the ones that came back to me after like 30 minutes after they got off the phone with me. And I'm like, okay. But in the beginning, I didn't realize, right? I'm like, okay, that's great. I'm so happy, right? They want to work with me. But I could have saved myself a lot of trouble if I just would have said politely, maybe take some more time, get back to me in 2 days, right? And to see if you still feel the same way, because I feel like now, back to my story with the bridesmaids, I had to turn down the potential client. So exactly that. I called her, everything was good. And literally the whole conversation, like, oh, well, my bridesmaid said this, and I can't do that. Oh, my bridesmaid said this. And I'm like, okay, but I'm asking what you want, not what your bridesmaid wants. Like, whose wedding am I planning here? Your bridesmaids that's potentially single or want to be married, wants to get married and engaged? or your wedding. So the whole I'm not kidding you, Rachel, the whole conversation, oh, my bridesmaid said to look out for this. Oh, but my bridesmaid. And I'm like, but this is your wedding here, not your bridesmaids, right? And
Yeah.
all. So to me, I usually don't say this at the end of a conversation, but I said it very politely and to put it as nicely as I can, saying, look, I don't think we're gonna work out working together, but I wish you the best to find a planner that you'll be more compatible with. Because I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't, because I already knew in my mind, I'm like, this is a big red flag. Because guess who's gonna be at the meetings? Her bridesmaid, and guess who's gonna make the decision for the bride? Her bridesmaid. That was it. It
Yeah.
was the bridesmaids show basically. And in some cases, I understand that some brides need a little encouragement, just a little push, to get things going. Like a lot of encouragement, say, hey, you know what? It's okay, this, whatever, a little pep talk from her bridesmaids, right? To keep it going, but not to the point where the bridesmaid is going to like take over the whole thing. It's not her wedding. So I learned early on that that's a huge reflex of it. And I know if I ever hear that again, to politely ask the bride saying, look, I'm working for you, not your bridesmaid, and your bridesmaid will have to just let me do what I need to do, right?
Yeah.
Realistically, it's a job, and like I said, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with the job. Responsible for everything in a way that happens. Not every, because things do happen that are unforeseen, things might happen, but the majority of it, it's me the one you paid to be in charge and to make sure your wedding actually happens and not
Is
just
going off without a hitch. Yeah.
and not a figment of your imagination, and it's gonna
Yeah.
real but it's really going to happen, right? That's what it comes down to. So for me, that was one red flag I learned early on, that I can't have that happen. That's not happening. And I understand, coming from a bride's perspective, you're intimidated because some vendors, not all vendors, and I said this before, that some vendors, they just want your money. That's all they want. They'll say anything to you to like
Mm.
make sure you sign their contract. That's the reality. And I had many past clients, not many, a few, I'd say a handful, they come to me with a contract from said vendor. I don't want to pick on any vendors, that's what I'm saying, vendors in general. But let's say a vendor, XYZ vendor providing this service, a particular service says, yeah, we could do this, we could do that, we could do this for you. Okay, sign on the contract. Okay, they sign. So then when I introduce myself to said vendor, I'm like, hey, I'm so and so's wedding planner, blah, blah, blah. I seen the contract. You could do this, you could do that, you could do this. It's all signed. And they're like, yeah, 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 we could do it. I'm like, no, I need you to tell me, can you do it or not? Because
Mm.
is this realistic what you could do? And then the good vendors say, yeah, we could do it. And I know who the better vendors are. Over time with experience, I got to know, and I'm getting to know who are the better vendors and who are not, right? So, let's say if it's a vendor I worked with before, I'm like, yeah, I know they could do it. I'm like, hey, how are you doing? So and so. Yeah, I'm working with you again. Okay, no problem, Val. Okay, I'll talk to you in a bit. Like, because I know them. I have the relationship with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But let's say if it's a newer vendor that started off, I'm a little iffy about them, because like, can they actually do the job? Or are they just saying that to me so I can leave them alone? Right? So, that's for me too a little tricky, because and it happened to me twice actually, that it was a newer vendor, they're just starting out, and, they promised the client certain things. And I'm like, you know what, Val, let me give them an honest chance, right? Let me give them a fair shot at it. They totally ended up not doing anything that the client wanted, and
Oh
it was
no.
unfortunate, but the client, because I didn't refer that vendor to the client, right? The client signed that vendor their contract before, like 6 months before I was in the picture.
Ah,
So,
okay.
so they took, they understood the risk they were taking. But that's why I always tell anyone getting married that's interested in getting a wedding planner, because some individuals say we could do it all on our own. And I'm like, yes, you could do it all on your own. And I'm not doubting anyone's skills. But the majority of the time is like, you know, if you have a full time job, no matter what you do, whatever you're doing, wedding planning is like a job on its own because you have to follow up with vendors, right? The vendors will want certain information, right? You have the venue that you're getting married. You have to. It's a lot of back and forth, and some individuals don't have time to do that, so that's why wedding planners are there to help. But in wedding, like, and what I do is I always, like I said, I give that recommendation list. I'm like, anyone you like, go check them out, go see their work. If you like them, tell me and I'll contact them on your behalf and we'll go from there, right? Because they're my recommendation, right? They're who I refer, right? And it's unfortunate because sometimes it's too late when I come along, right? And it happened once, no, twice to me, that everything was pretty much almost booked, right? For the wedding, for my client's wedding, and basically the venue decided to change their mind on the food last minute, right?
Oh,
and
geez.
they changed the whole menu indirectly without telling the couple, and I caught that change. I'm like, hey, why are you changing it? Like, how, I don't even remember how I caught on, but like, because I think my client said something like, yeah, something's fishy with the menu. I'm like, why? Like, the menu's already set and everyone picked their food. They're like, yeah, but they told me they're going to change this. And I'm like, they can't change it a week before your wedding. They have to at least tell you 2 3 weeks before, right? So it was a whole mess. Anyways, it was a whole mess. Anyways, everything basically, it worked out at the end because, the client gave them a hard time, and I said, well, you can't, they signed a contract saying this would it. Yes, there's a few changes, like maybe the seasonal vegetables will change, but that's a small thing, not the whole menu
Not the
choice for what
entire thing. Yeah,
it
yeah.
exactly, not the whole menu. So we gave them, I was honest. I'm like, what, why are you changing it? Like, that wasn't in the contract, what they signed a year ago, practically, what they were promised. It worked out, thankfully, but you always have to be, you always have to be on top of the vendors. Some
You have to be,
vendors,
it sounds like you have to like be like on your feet
yeah,
and ready
you
to catch any
always
little thing and also to be able to roll with the punches.
Yeah, and sometimes, like I said, sometimes I don't even see like today, perfect example, I didn't see the punches come. Like, okay, this is news to me. And this wedding in particular, it's next weekend, next Friday. So you see, it's like things like that. So I'm always, you always have to be on your A game. It's like, yes, there's a limit. I know I can only do so much. I'm only human, right? I'm not a robot, so to speak. But you always have to be. And for the clients that, for people that are getting married that don't have a planner, it's even more challenging
Oh,
because
I bet.
they don't know what to look for. To them, it's okay, right? To them, it's normal. And some, and the couples that are getting married, they might think, oh, this is standard practice. This is how it's supposed to be. But in reality, they're not getting what they're paying for, right? So it's super important. If something doesn't feel right, you have to, even if it even if it doesn't feel right, go ask questions or double check and get everything in writing. If it's by email, text
Oh,
message,
for sure. Yeah.
whatever it is, always have a trail, so to speak. And that's why it's so important to like have everything, on email or text, whatever way of communicate, not phone, but whatever way, just have it on email, have it there so you have proof of something. And always print out contracts, always have a contract with you. Don't just take a word for it. Even if they're your good friend, they're doing your catering for your wedding, and even if that's your BFF since elementary, I'm so happy for you. Get a contract. Don't trust the word they say because your best friend could turn on you. And I saw it happen.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
oh
Yeah, I
yes.
mean, it
And
can happen, and it's also important. Like, working with friends
oh
can
my
ruin
gosh,
relationships. So
it
it's good to
could.
have clear expectations.
Exactly. And that's why I always tell anyone that's getting married, yes, sometimes your friends will do you a big favor and that's amazing. But I've seen the opposite happen, that it didn't work out, the wedding, and now they're no longer friends to my knowledge after the wedding. So you
Ugh.
see, and that's the thing, because yes, your friend, is your friend. They're not there to work. They think, oh, I'm there to enjoy it too, right? But no, you're your staff that day. You're not going to party. You're providing a service, whatever service it might be. You're there to work. And when I talk to these friends of the couple, I'm like, look, you're working. You're not gonna go party. You're providing, let's say, this service, right? And I expect you to provide a service that you said you would, right? So I have to manage, that too, the friends reality check, let's say, or acquaintances
Ugh.
reality check.
Yeah, that's a lot of
So,
effort.
and that's why, and that's why I'm starting in a way to get away from weddings or that my or potential clients says, oh, it's my friend, depends on what
Hmm.
they're doing. Let's say if the friend's a caterer, I trying to avoid more of those weddings just
Sure.
because I know. But let's say if the friend is a florist, it's fine. You bring the flowers, that's it. Amazing job. Next,
Yeah.
it's
Cool.
just the flowers. Even photographers too. Like some, I'm like I don't mind, but it's more the food because the food is such a big part, right?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
the core of the wedding. So I'm starting, I guess, through experience just to be careful of like, okay, what type of vibe, who, the ins and the outs, and because some friends are amazing, they do such an amazing job. I'm like, wow, this is better than some vendors I worked with, but some I'm like, it could win a little bit better. So over time, it's more just to protect myself too, right? To be like, hey, it's at the end of the day, it's whatever the client wants, but I have a responsibility too to make sure that, to make sure the wedding goes well, right? That's on my butt, basically, to make sure
Yeah.
everything turns out as perfect, quote unquote, as it could be, right? Yes, things do happen that you can't control, like the weather. You can't control the rain or the rain or hot. I wish I could, but you can't. Or I can't control certain things, but certain things, I do have control over, and I'll make sure that it happens flawlessly as the best to my ability. Because not only that would it look bad on me if something were to happen, but it'll look bad on my whole entire brand, so to speak. So
Yeah.
there's a lot sometimes at stake, and I guess after all, like I'm sort of used to that reality, but sometimes I'm so in the zone in a wedding that I'm like, okay, whatever happens, happens, but and it's decisions that I have to make, let's say throughout a wedding, that could affect my future business. So it's always in the back of my mind, like, okay, this could happen, I have to do this. If that happens, I have to do that. So it's like it's like, again, it's like pros and cons, but so far, all the ones I've done, I'm very lucky that everything did go well, as perfect as the couple wanted. So very, very lucky that did
That's
happen so
incredible.
far.
Yeah, I love to
So
hear
far,
that.
so
And I
far
guess
at
I
this point.
let's hope that that keeps going.
Yes,
I guess like
exactly.
a question that I have, that I
Yes.
kind of want to focus on for like the last few minutes here
Yeah,
is
sure.
when what have you seen like in a wedding? And it sounds like you're so in the zone when you're doing this
You're
that maybe
you're
you're
in the
not seeing
zone.
this.
Oh,
But like
I've
have you
seen
seen like red flags or green flags of like what might indicate
seen
that a marriage is good?
I've seen something interesting. So last year I did a wedding. It was Everything was going well planning wise, everything was good. The day of the wedding comes, right? And so this couple did their wedding and ceremony at the same place, right? More and more couples are doing this trend. They get married at the same place and the reception at the same place.
Yeah, it keeps it
Nothing.
simple.
Yeah, keep it simple, less traveling, less parking to find, blah, blah, blah. Perfect. So the bride walks in, everything, the groom is waiting for her, everything, everyone's standing, crying, emotions. So the officiant, oh my goodness, she's like, okay, please, everyone, take their seats. We're like, okay, everyone, please be seated, right? The music stops and she's talking. The groom runs out, he's bolting to the door, bolting, like
What?
bolting to he bolted to the door. He was running like there's like he was on fire or something. He wasn't, but he was bolting to the door. And I caught that. I look at the photographer. We both are like, what? Because the photographer was standing with me, right, to get a better angle, right? Certain shots from the back.
Mhm.
So I chase after him because I tell her, I'm like, stay here, take pictures of whatever you can. I bolt out of the room along with the best man and the officiant. All three of us go running. The bride is almost practically in tears, practically. As I remembered in the back of my mind, I remembered that the limo was waiting outside for them after take. I'm like, don't tell me he ran the limo. I'm like, please don't tell me he's leaving, because I was scared. He had to find a garbage because he got drunk the night before his wedding, basically. So he
Oh.
drank to the point that he was still recovering from the night before. And I remember the night before, because we had the rehearsal, I remember telling the best man, I'm like, make sure he doesn't, just don't drink, just have something else, like don't have to drink. what does he do? Drink.
Of
Obviously,
course.
no one stopped him, say, hey, tomorrow's your wedding day. No one seemed to care. No one took responsibility. So
Boys.
of course, so after the whole kerfuffle, he drank water, and I remember what I bring with me on wedding days, like an emergency kit bag, so it's like a fancy gym bag with stuff in there, like all things that you might need. I have like breast spray, the little the spray,
Mm-hmm.
and I had like this granola bar. So I gave him a granola bar at least to hold everything together for the ceremony. I gave him I'm like, you need this breast spray more than anyone here. And then ceremony resumed. After the ceremony, they were supposed to go take pictures. Supposed to take pictures. The bride didn't want to take pictures after. We had to convince her to go take pictures with her husband. She wasn't happy at all. She was not a happy camper after that happened.
Yeah.
She was very disappointed. Like, you saw it on her face. Like, she's like, of course you have to go drink. Like, come on. And she was almost in tears. Like, because when I went to chase after him, probably she cried. Like, it wouldn't surprise me, So I felt I'm like, of course this had to happen. And what's even more awkward is, like, after the first, because she danced with him. I was surprised she danced with him very surprised. Because I remember telling the DJ, I'm like, we might not have a first dance. Again, we'll see what happens. But after the first dance, the whole night, she was with her bridesmaids and he was like sort of alone, So she wasn't happy, to say the least. I think it was more disappointment. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
I think you could see, and it's sad because I'm sure they had beautiful pictures, but you saw it on her face that she was sad.
That's
and
heartbreaking.
but like, you can't hide it, and that's why I tell the brides, like, I know it's like you can't control it, but just try to always look like you're smiling, not frowning, because Photoshop could only do so much. We could remove maybe an acne or maybe add that, but we can't control how your face is going to look, So I always tell the brides, I'm like, look, no matter what you're feeling inside, just smile. Like, even if it's a fake smile, it's better than frowning, or looking sad. So unfortunately for that wedding, it was more like I caught that one at that wedding. But so far, I mean, at other weddings I've done, there's like, I'm pretty much, yes, I'm in the zone, but I'm also, I guess, in a way, looking at my surroundings. And I always know where the bride and groom are. I always know where they are, because that's my target. I have to know where they are at all times, just for safety, right? Not safety, but if I need them, I know where they are. So that's why I always tell the photographer, because the photographer always takes them for pictures or whatever. I'm like, text me or like call me saying, okay, I have them. We're on our way to, let's say, the photo location. And I have a detailed schedule for that wedding day saying, well, let's say at 5:35, you're supposed to be at pictures. Unless if that changes, well, you're not at pictures, you know what I mean? So it really comes down to that, I always know where they are, but that's one time that I saw that. And I think, I mean, knock on wood, that's the worst I've seen. I'm sure there'll be many more crazy stories after that, for sure to come. But it was more, that was the one time, like, oh boy, like, the poor like, and I felt bad for his mom too, because she was embarrassed, you could see that on her face. She's like, of course my son has, probably in her head, of course he has to drink, probably she told him not to do that too, right? I don't know that conversation, but regardless, at the end of the day, I'm like, yes, I'm focused, but at the same time, I try to I know where they always are. I know what's my surrounding. I always try to have, it's like a whole, I want to say, like, strategy, like game day
constant
strategy.
awareness. Yeah.
It's like always awareness. What's going on? Okay, where's the food? Okay, we're supposed to have second course. Okay, why isn't it coming out? Where are my bride and groom? Where is the groom? Where is the bride? Why is the groom sitting? Where is the bride? We need the bride. So it's like, it's always like a constant, like, where are they? But you can't miss them, right? You always see them. They're always there, and they know where I am too. Because I always have a pink clipboard with me, because pink's my favorite color, and it's bright,
easy to see.
Exactly. So if you see, because I'm always dressed, professionally in a black dress or black pants, let's say black whatever, but you could always see my pink clipboard, so they know, okay, look for someone short with blonde hair and a pink clipboard. You found me,
And that's
so,
why
like,
it's good to have a wedding planner.
Exactly. That's what. Then
so you don't have to. I mean, that's the point. You pay somebody so that you don't have to worry about it.
Exactly. And of course, I can't control how stressed you'll be. Like
Right.
everyone's different when it comes to stress. Some brides I had, they weren't stressed at all. And I'm like, this is amazing. But some brides are a little more stressed and then they ease out, they ease in after. But I try everything I could do to make sure that they're not worried about certain things, right? But
Yeah.
it's just, I guess, the excitement, the overwhelming. Because remember, on their wedding day, they're basically, yes, they'll eat, and I always make sure I have like they have their food and everything and extra food. I go get them food, whatever they need, but everyone is like looking for them. And that's why, if
Yes.
example they need to take pictures, I always have to like claw them away from everyone. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay,
Yeah.
they're leaving, and that's your wedding day in a nutshell. Everyone's
Yep.
looking for you. Everyone is going to want to take a picture with you. Everyone, like, even if you have to go to the washroom, you better make that fast because someone will find you in the washroom, okay? And
Yep.
I remember one wedding, the bride really had to go. I literally had to lock the washroom. I had
Oh
to
my
lock
gosh.
it. And I was in with her to help her with her dress and everything there because she had quite a big dress, very beautiful dress, but a lot of layers. So I had to help her, and I'm like, I'm locking the door right now, so no one could come in and bother you. She's like, okay, good. So like, if I have to do that, I will lock the door. I don't care. Find another washroom. She's in here. Let her be for those 5 minutes of the day,
Yeah. Peace. Yeah.
And some brides, they don't mind the attention. They have no problem with it. Depends who you are as a person. And most brides, they're okay, but you have the few that are a little more anxious and they don't want that much attention. So I always try to make sure that if I see my bride getting overwhelmed, or even the groom overwhelmed, I make sure that, hey, do you want to go
Yeah.
like in the bridal suite or in another room alone, to take a breather.
Touch base.
So
Yeah.
exactly. And that's important too. So everyone, when it comes to their wedding day, I feel like you don't really know how you'll be until you're put in the situation.
Right.
You could think, hey, I'm going to be great. I'll be fine. And it's all about, I guess, mentally prepping yourself before the wedding. You have to start ahead saying, okay, you know what? I know I'm more anxious. How am I going to calm myself down? Okay, this and that. So it's always, and I always tell my clients, think of like a game plan for yourselves. You don't have to tell me, but if you're going to feel overwhelmed, say, hey, Val, can I go to the bridal room, at the venue? Okay, go there. I know where you are. Text me
Mm-hmm.
when you want me to come get you, and I'll come get, let's say, the bride and groom together and whatever. So it's always about, having a strategy, because,
Yeah.
because everyone, when I mean everyone will want to take, not everyone, but everyone want to be near you, want to dance near you, right? And you're basically the bride and groom. You're the center of attention, basically the whole
And
night
that's,
and the
I mean,
day.
that's the point. That's the point of it, but it is
Exactly.
very, very
But it could
stressful at the same time.
And that's why I noticed after, like, when it gets like 3 months before the wedding or even 2 months, that's when not all, some brides and grooms start to become nervous all of a sudden.
Mm.
They
Mm-hmm.
start to get a little antsy, and then I'm like, well, it's 3 months before the wedding. Reality is going to kick in before you know it.
Okay.
So
Good to know.
I noticed that they get, for no reason. I mean, everything is going how it's supposed to, but they start to get a little more antsy, a little more anxious. And I'm like, okay, well, now it's really getting close, and they're realizing, like, okay, there's gonna be a lot of people, whatever. And that, unfortunately, I can't control how you're gonna feel, but I could help you through that day. If you need a breather, if you need this, I could do what I can, what's at my disposal to help you. I'll always do what I can to make sure that you're not feeling that overwhelmed, if that makes sense. I do try. There's I only
Definitely.
have certain limitations, but I always try my best to make sure the day of the wedding they're not as stressed, or if they're stressed, okay, what can we do to calm you down? Do you need to be alone somewhere? Do you need something to drink? Do you need something to help you? We'll make it happen. That's simple. And I'll do
Yeah.
everything that I can, that I have power in a way, so to speak, to make it happen. And I think that pretty much sums it up, what I do as a wedding planner and what I observe and what goes on through my head as a wedding planner.
No, I mean, that is so much information
It is
in like an hour. So much incredible information. I
a
mean,
lot.
I haven't been married, but it's going to happen someday.
Hmm.
And I am glad to have all of this information
And like
at
I
my
said,
disposal eventually. Yeah.
it like I said, everyone is so different, and everyone, has, I guess, a pink, like if you're engaged and you have a vision in your mind how you want your wedding. You have some sort of picture, right? But a lot of
Mm-hmm.
I find a lot of brides and grooms that come to me, they always forget, like they're always like missing a few parts to really put it
Sure.
in gear, and that's why I'm there to help them to put, I guess you could say, all the puzzle pieces
Together to make
together
one
to
big
make it
picture.
to make one
Yeah.
big picture, and that's pretty much to bring that picture into reality, and then we make it happen with the vendors, the venue, the this one, that one. And what plays a big part too is, your family too, that they have to,
Mm.
respect your boundaries, which is a big one too. It's all about your boundaries. And I always tell my couples, I'm like, if you're having a problem with a family member, I could ease that too. I could talk to them saying, hey, whatever. I've done that before to ease some, family members, to ease them a little bit, to reassure them that everything's going to be okay. Because some brides and grooms are more modern, not traditional, right? And
Right,
some
right.
certain family members, so to speak, aren't happy about that, right? Because they wanted more traditional. But I always, when I call I'm like, hey, you know what? I understand you want this for the wedding, but trust me, it's going to be beautiful no matter what. What would you like to see? Okay, let's see if we can incorporate it. And then they feel a little bit better, like knowing that there'll be a little part for them. So it's all,
Yeah.
and I always tell my couples, I'm like, whatever it is, don't don't hide things from me because I will find out, but it'll be too late. It'll be too late for me to do anything because the wedding day will be here before you know it. And I feel bad. I do feel bad because I'm like, if you told me this like 3 months ago, this wouldn't have even been an issue, right? So I always check in with my clients how they're doing if I can, because some might text, some might call, some might FaceTime, some is only by email. So I always find my clients' patterns and I know when they usually answer. And if I want an answer, I know when to message them, get it? It's like a whole game plan. I'm like, hey, this one, if I call her, I know she's gonna answer. But that one, I have to text, then she'll answer. So it's like a whole thing. And I always, try my best to touch base with my clients, be like, how are they doing? Okay, mentally, how are you doing? What's going on in your life? Is there something stopping you from planning for now, right? So I need to know this to reevaluate the whole planning, right? Because if we stop
Yeah.
planning, and I mean, they stop, but I still continue for them because, there's a lot of things to do. But if you stop planning, that means I can't text you or email you because you need time to, like, if you're in school or work, something, whatever the case might be. I know I'm not going to get an answer for maybe another month from you, right? After you come back. So it's always about readjusting and making sure that we're still on track, but realistically, what has to be done in a nutshell,
Totally.
so to speak.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Valerie, thank you so much for all of that information.
My
It sounds like
pleasure.
you wear so many hats and
Yeah, it's
um
never a dull moment, but
yeah.
it's at the end, like I said in the beginning, it's so rewarding what I do because it's like you're part of that couple's journey, their beginning, so to speak, of
Hmm.
their life together. So if you look at it that way, it's very special that, they chose me to be their
Yeah.
planner to help them with this special day of theirs. So it's a great, it's actually, it's like, so, and only there's only some weddings. I don't cry at weddings anymore because I've seen too many. But there's only a few that I cry because I actually got super close with the clients. I actually
Mm-hmm.
have a real nice friendship. And there's one of my clients from 2 years ago that I'm good friends with her now today. We're still keeping in touch,
Aw.
and we hang out for coffee, how her kids are doing, all that good stuff. So there's only a few clients that I guess we become good friends after that for that
Sure.
reason. And that's, part of it. That's, I guess, being a wedding planner in a nutshell in an hour. What it's really the nitty gritty of it, so to
Amazing.
speak.
All right. Well, thank you, Valerie, for all that information. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. I hope that this was something that you were able, hope there was something in here that you were able to take away. I know that I have a ton of things. I'm going to have to listen back and take notes. Valerie, where can people find you?
Yes, so I do have an Instagram. It's called Vintage Luxe Events. I have my Facebook page linked on my Instagram. I have a website. It's Vintage Luxe Events Montreal. Again, everything is in the link on my Instagram. I have a link tree, which I just discovered 2 months ago, which I'm very
Oh, I
thankful
love
for. Very
Linktree.
easy to use. And it's genius. I didn't know about it before. So everything, when you go on my Instagram, Vintage Luxe Events, you click on the link and it'll bring you everything is there on one convenient spot.
Amazing.
So you'll see
Incredible.
everything there for me and what I'm up to, like what I'm up to. And I always post weddings, inspiration of my work. So I hope it can inspire someone as well.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone, for listening. You've been listening to Wine, Dine, and 69. I am your host, Rachel Dalton, and let's keep talking.